Our featured artist, Barbara Abel, is, this is your second show, solo show with Archway Gallery, and it's just a beautiful show. It's a tribute to our national parks, and I think she's going to be urging everyone to go to some of our national parks. This is the 100th anniversary of the National Park Service. So anyway, enjoy, and let's hear more from Barbara.
Thank you everyone for coming out on the screen today. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the 100-year anniversary of the national parks. There's an artist named George Catlin, born around 1800, and he's actually the one who is given credit for coming up with the idea of a national park. And his idea was that he thought large pieces of land should be set aside by the federal government, and that they would preserve the plants and the animals. And he also, in his philosophy, Native Americans would also live there. So we all know how that turned out. But George Catlin did about 1,000 portraits of Indians in his lifetime, and 500 of them are at the Smithsonian in a collection. So he's a fabulous artist. Well, the father, who's considered the father of the national park system, is a naturalist named John Muir. He was born in Scotland, and he immigrated to the United States with his family because his father was very religious, and he said that the Church of Scotland wasn't strict enough. And that if you were doing anything other than studying Bible verses, it was a waste of time. Well, by the time John Muir got to college, he decided he'd had enough of that, and he took off out west. He was born around 1840. And so he traveled all over the West, and actually to South and Central America and up to Alaska. And one of his favorite places was Yosemite. So he actually built a cabin on the Yosemite River, and he built his cabin so that part of the river ran through his cabin, so that he would always be able to hear the water, which I think was a fabulous idea. So in the late 1800s, he convinced the state of California to make Yosemite a park. But there were politicians that he was in complete opposition to that wanted to use the national parks for timber and for grazing cattle and sheep. He called grazing sheep the locusts of the West. He wanted to keep these parks pristine and keep all of that, all the people out, and he was so upset when they came in and clear cut. So about 1903, President Roosevelt decided he wanted to see Yosemite. So he took a train out there, and then from there he got a stagecoach, and John Muir met him, and he asked John Muir to show him the real Yosemite. So the two of them took off with some pack mules, and they went camping up in the mountains and to the old Indian trails, and they stayed up late at night talking, and it actually snowed on them. And by the time morning came, he had convinced Roosevelt that the parks, in order to be protected correctly, should be protected by the federal government. And I have here a picture of John Muir and Roosevelt at Yosemite. So that is how our national park system came about. So I have been lucky enough to visit about 8 of them, but there's someone in here, Larry Narmesy, who has visited like 24. So I'm encouraging everyone here to try to go visit the national parks. I just brought a map to show you that most of them are out west, but I mean they're just really beautiful. So this particular show that I did was about the spirit of these men, Catlin and Muir, to want to preserve the wilderness. So rather than just painting an exact scene from a park, I tried to paint more the essence, more the spiritual feeling that I got from the parks. So as you go around, you will see all my ideas about the parks. The other thing that I do, real quickly, is I also like to do collage. And my collage are kind of more about social media, about how we're bombarded all the time with all these images. And so I brought a sample, and The way I start out is I start out with just actually rectangles of paper. And for this particular show, I use patterns that were created by the wonderful artist William Morris. He has beautiful, so I just put on squares and do a nice design. Then I take images that I've cut out of magazines, and I get like probably 10 subscriptions a month, way too many. And I try to put them on there using my right brain. I don't want them to have to make sense. It's kind of like if you read about in the dream state, how things get mixed up and overlapped, and we have different ways. So that's what I try to do with my collages. Any questions?
Do you want to explain Alla Prima and Sprezzatura?
Oh yeah, and the title of the show, Alla Prima, it's Sprezzatura, is because Alla Prima means painting wet on wet. And so I love that fresh quality of painting wet paint onto wet paint. And Sprezzatura is an Italian term that means to do something with ease, to be cool, you know, to make it look like that it wasn't any trouble at all. I'm going to admit that sometimes I do sweat over this stuff. But the point of it is I'm trying to make it look like it's easy. So that's it. So everybody enjoy. Try to go.